Once upon a time, long, long ago, there was a little group known as the Castle and Crusade Society. Their fantasy rules were published, and to the writer's knowledge, brought about much of the current interest in fantasy wargaming. For a time, the group grew and prospered, and Dave Arneson decided to begin a medieval fantasy campaign game for his active Twin Cities club. From the map of the land of the Great Kingdom and the environment, the territory of the C&C Society, Dave located a nice bog wherein to nest the weird enclave of the Black Moor, a spot between the Great Kingdom and the fearsome egg of Coot. From the Chainmail Society fantasy rules, he drew ideas for a far complex and exciting game, and thus began a campaign which still thrives as of this writing. In due course, the news reached my ears, and the result of that is what you have in your hands at this moment. While the C&C Society is no longer, its spirit lives on, and we believe all wargamers who are interested in the medieval period, not just fantasy buffs, will enjoy playing Dungeons & Dragons. Its possibilities go far beyond any previous offerings anywhere. I'm not going to do the whole thing because this is insane. No one wants to listen to me for that long.
I do. I want you to read that as I go to bed.
Okay, well then let's continue. While it is possible to play a single game, unrelated to any other game events, past or future, it is the campaign for which these rules are designed. It is relatively simple to set up a fantasy campaign, and better still, it will cost almost nothing. In fact, you will not even need miniature figures. Although their occasional employment is recommended for real spectacle when battles are fought. A quick glance of the equipment section in this booklet will reveal just how little is required. The most extensive equipment is time. The campaign referee will have to have sufficient time to meet the demands of his players. He will have to devote a number of helpful suggestions regarding how to accomplish it all, and have been given an order to help you accomplish the task with a minimum of time and effort. There should be no want of players, for there is unquestionably a fascination in this fantasy game, evidenced even by those could not, by any stretch of the imagination, be termed ardent wargamers. The longevity of existing campaigns, notably Blackmoor in the Twin Cities and Greyhawk in Lake Geneva, and the demand for these rules from people outside their campaigns, point towards a fantastic future. Tactical Studies Rules believes that all forms of wargaming fantasy will soon be a major contender for first place. The section of this booklet titled Scope will provide an idea of just how many possibilities are inherent in Dungeons & Dragons. These rules are strictly fantasy. Those wargamers who lack imagination, those who don't care for Burroughs' Martian adventures, where John Carter is groping through the black pits, who feel no thrill upon reading Howard's Canon Saga, who do not enjoy the DeCamp and Pratt fantasies of Fritz, Leibar, Fard, and the Grey Mouser pitting their swords against evil sorceries, will not be likely to find Dungeons & Dragons to their taste. But those whose imaginations know no bounds will find these rules are the answer to their prayers. With this last bit of advice, we invite you to read on and enjoy a world where the fantastic, in fact, and magic really works. Gary Gygax, 1st of November, 1973.
Mic drop.
Whew.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to take a half-hour break, everyone.
That was the foreword for what exactly?
So that is the foreword to Dungeons & Dragons, Volume 1, Men and Magic.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So that was in 1973. So we're coming up on 50 years of when he wrote that prior to the game coming out.
Wow. 50 years of tradition that we're shitting on this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I know there are a couple different things I said wrong, and that's okay. So all you haters in Seattle, it's okay. I still love you. So I know we do our normal intro, but prior to that, I wanted to do a few trivia questions for Nick and Tim that are here. So do you know what D&D was inspired by? So this would be something that Gary Gygax inspired him to write D&D.
Well, of course.
What do you think?
Well, of course.
Well, I know he drew inspiration from Tolkien and a lot of the world that Tolkien created. Gygax also took a lot of stuff from the war games that he used to play, and kind of like the chainmail was kind of like the first thing that he started off, and then morphed that more into actual D&D.
Okay. Tim, who were the original play testers for Dungeons and Dragons?
Oh, Jesus Christ. I have no idea.
Nick, you have a guess?
I believe it was some of the other just war gamers that played. They would just introduce some stuff to them in some of their sessions.
Probably the Lake Geneva crew.
Yeah.
Okay. Where was the first publishing run assembled?
Ooh, I don't know that one.
Somewhere in the Midwest. I
Okay.
know Lake Geneva was in Wisconsin, but I don't know if that's where it was published.
Okay. Well, those are a couple questions that you have to listen to the rest of the podcast to find out.
Ooh.
See how many points we didn't earn in our answers.
And then one of us will probably die. So stay tuned.
Roll initiative.
Oh, no. Why do you have swords?
I rolled in that one.
Oh. Womp womp. Hey, I rolled in that one.
I rolled a 3. Hell yeah.
We're going great, guys.
Perfect.
Well, welcome to the BS roll. I just started it, so I could tell Tim to now actually do the actual one because he's good at it and I'm not. So go ahead, Tim.
I don't know what I'm doing.
You're doing the intro.
We already did the music. Welcome to the BS roll at night.
Nights.
Where we talk about Dungeons and Dragons and stuff.
And stuff.
Yeah, we're focusing mostly on like the original edition of D&D, and we kind of talked about Nick and I kind of talked about it a little bit, like the Lake Geneva stuff, the Gen Con, kind of where the chainmail thing came from. We're actually going to do a little bit diaper.
Yep,
Diaper of a D.
We're going to do a
so
diaper,
far in
we're gonna
time,
do
we're
a
all
diaper
children.
dive.
We got in our DeLorean. We went back in time. We are now infants.
We're in diapers and dragons, where we'll do a deeper dive into original. And I did zero research, and I know these two did, so I'm fascinated to learn with everyone who's listening.
Yeah,
Hey.
I read 149 pages-ish of the original D&D books. So it was released in 1974. And I guess this would be another trivia question. How much money did you think it cost in 1974 to buy the original edition?
$3.
Okay. Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, like $2.50.
It was $10 for
Oh my God.
for all 3 of the books.
See, I was really close. $3 per book.
Well, yeah, what's wild, though, is so if you take that and account for inflation, so in 2023, it'd be $60, which is about what you would pay now.
Yep.
And then there were like multiple supplement books. And just take a shot in the dark, how much do you think those cost?
$1 each.
Sure, $1.
$5,
What the fuck?
which in today's money would be $30, which is very similar
Yeah.
to like what you pay for the source books now. So it's like
Yep.
kind of wild that like it's stayed true for
Unlike other things.
dang near 50 years, like exactly right in line with it. So
And I can't imagine those original source books was like 150 pages.
yeah, it was like each one of them was like 40 to 50 pages. So.
When like one of the source books now are, what, 150, 200 pages?
Oh, yeah,
More than that.
Absolutely. And I did look it up. There were, and I wrote it down, but now I don't see it. So, 27 source books. I did I counted today. There are 27 source books today, like in D&D right now, and those aren't counting like any like third
Like for
party.
the 5th edition,
For 5th edition, right now you can buy 27 different books.
it costs you like a little over $2,000, I
Well,
think, to get everything.
I mean, it ranged like looking at the source books. They range from like $15 to like $40. So still kind of averaging that 30 range. But yeah, kind of going back to 1974, it was, a comparatively simple rule set. I know in the last session you had talked about the different races. So there were humans, there were dwarves, there were elves, and then there were hobbits. Until
everyone wanted to start canceling things.
well, so they actually Tolkien, however you want to pronounce it. Don't cancel me for how I say it.
Our Lord and Savior.
Yeah, the family actually came after them and said, if you don't change it, like, we'll actually sue you. So that's why it was changed to
That's right.
halflings. So it's kind of wild.
Copyrighted.
Yeah, because I imagine J.R.R. Tolkien wouldn't have cared, but his estate does.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like,
They want their money.
That's still making their money. Like, some people are in it for the fantasy, some people are in it for the money. And so there were three main classes. There were fighting men, which was actually what they were called, now
Yep.
fighters. The magic users.
Yep. Not wizards. Not
Magic.
sorcerers.
Yeah.
Magic users.
And the one thing that will never die, the clerics. So,
Have the fighters and the clerics been in all of the editions? I imagine so.
well, not in the original edition because they were fighting men.
yeah.
They were not fighters.
Fighting men.
So, yeah.
Because there were no women.
There are no women fighters.
Which, well, I mean, not in the original edition. I didn't write this. You got to remember this.
Yeah, you sexist pig,
Oh,
you.
damn. Valerie's going to be like, Phil, I can't believe how sexist you were.
She doesn't listen to this.
That's true. And then so, like, fighting men could only be elves, dwarves, halflings, and humans. And then magic users could only be men and elves. And then clerics could only be men.
Interesting.
And so it was just kind of wild. But what's really interesting is elves could actually switch between classes. So in between sessions, so say you wanted to switch from like a fighter to a magic user, you could do it. You just couldn't do it in like what they referred to as a game, which would be a session. And so I was just like, well, it's kind of weird because when you take a look at like when you dive into like the like characters and like their leveling, dwarves and halflings can only go to level 4.
It's because
Okay.
they're half the stature of men and elves.
Yeah, but that's what's wild. And then it's like, then men could literally be anything that they want. And then elves could, switch between pretty much everything except not be clerics. And
That's
so it's just kind of
wild.
Yeah, I mean, it literally is a class system. So I don't know, what to take from that. And then in 1976, they released 2 supplement books, the Greyhawk supplement and the Eldritch Wizardry supplement, which introduced the Thief, which is now the Rogue, and then the Druid, which is
Still the druid.
still the Druid.
Still the druid, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like wild that like I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people still choose fighter. They still use some sort of magic user, and then typically there's a healer. So it's like it really hasn't changed. And then 1976, they're like, hey, you want to be sneaky and stab people, and then all of a sudden like that became super popular. So
Well, of course. They're like, I want to be still fighter, but I want to do it different.
yeah,
I don't want to just be all up in your face and just take hits. Nah, I want to do it all snooky like.
Like Snooki herself.
Yeah.
Snooki herself.
I
Hashtag sponsor us.
I would want to see what like the spells are for the original druid, because now it's insanity. What
It's Eldritch Blast, Magic Missile, and Fireball.
for a druid.
There's just all magic users. It's all they have access to.
No, that's not true at all. I was gonna say I can pull it up real quick here. It's gonna take me a minute.
Because like druids are one of the most like heavy magic people in 5e. Like they have tons of spells. Not to mention their wild shapes that they can do. Yeah.
Because they're furries.
Yep. And
True.
the multiple classes that they can do.
Yep.
Ugh, druids.
How dare they?
Yeah.
All right, so for magic users, I'm just gonna go like through some of them. So like their spell table, their first level, detect magic, hold portal, which is basically like arcane lock, but only for like a certain amount of time. Read magic, or I guess like you could actually read spells. Charm, and then like you move into like level 2, you can detect invisible. Wizard Lock, which is like an indefinite lock. Continual Light, which I thought that was funny because like light is like, now a cantrip, and they're like level 2 spell, haha, Continual Light. And then third level, you've got like Fly, which is crazy. You've got Clairvoyance, and then you've got Clairaudience, which basically means you can hear things like ethereally, which was kind of interesting. And then like your standard ones, they've got protection and normal missiles instead of magic missiles.
Does it say normal missiles or does it just say missiles?
It says protection / normal missiles. So you can have protective missiles that are like stopping incoming attacks.
Interesting.
Or like normal missiles that you could.
What is a normal missile?
It's like,
probably just magic missile, but
yeah, but it's just like instead of
the
protecting
attack version.
you, it's like an attack version.
Okay, all right.
So it's just like a laser system. There's the defense and the offense of it all.
Oh, got it.
Then like fourth level, you've got Polymorph Self and Polymorph Others. You've got Charm Monster, Mass Morph, where you could literally change the appearance and hide 100 people. Yeah, and that is a fourth level spell. Fifth level, but then again, like levels go up to 6th level with spells. 5th level Teleport. Where was one? Magic Jar, which is like a cool one. I'm not sure if you're familiar with. Basically, you can like capture your essence in a jar and like inhabit someone else's body. But it's like really weird rules where like the jar has to be close to your body while you're doing it. So like then you have to protect your jar and you have to protect the body. So
what if it's a jar of dirt?
Well, I've got a jar of dirt.
That polymorph spell, was it 2 different spells or was it just polymorph?
So there's Polymorph Self and then there's Polymorph Others. So it's 2 separate spells.
That's interesting because 5e is just polymorph. You can cast it on yourself.
Which it
or
makes
others.
sense because now you're not having to have 2 separate spells.
Right.
And you can just write it and make it more streamlined.
Now the question is, would they just get access to all these spells when they leveled up? Or would you have to pick and choose?
You would have to pick and choose what you had. A lot of magic relied around like having specific wands that would do it, or staves. Oof. So like wands would have like 100 charges, and staves would have 200 charges. Shit. And like a lot of spells, like you could only cast like like a healing spell on like one person per day. So like I could heal you once, but then I couldn't heal you the rest of the day. And that's like, oh, why would I be a cleric? But then you're just like, well, you know what? The clerics have stuck around for a long time. And then like your death spell, move earth, disintegrate. Those are like your 6th level spells. Clerics, this is actually my favorite one that I found when like reading. So you've got like your normal, like your cure wounds, purify water, detect evil, like those are your 1st level. Hasn't really changed. Then like your 2nd level, hold person. 3rd level, remove curse. 4th level, turn sticks to snakes. That is literally the name of the spell, and I want that.
100%.
I think we should just homebrew turn sticks to snakes for Enoch.
Yeah, I was just like, but like he can't control it, so it's like a random like percentile die, and he like picks up a stick and it just turns into a snake. But I'm just like, that is
Pharaohs
excellent.
of old, dude. Pharaohs of old.
Weird because like you can project beetles, I think, and there's like another weird cleric spell like that. Like you can summon a horde of stuff. I know, but
well, there's like insect plague.
Yeah,
which is, that's 5th level for a cleric, and then like create food, which is just wild that 5th level spell is create food because like that's how hardcore everyone was like. You got to keep track of this. Like I was looking at like the different levels of like spells, or like the different levels of like when you would like encounter like a goblin or stuff like that. Like it could be anywhere from 7 to like 100 of them. And so like you would have like these like because it still kind of like held the like ingrained the like massive war game kind of thing where you had army versus army. There were certain things where like with castles, like if you had a castle, you like got different bonuses, and if you had people in your castle like up to a certain amount, you literally made gold off of them like on a daily basis. So like it became like The Sims. It became like
I mean, they still have
Roller Coaster Tycoon, like all that stuff.
They have a little bit of that, like if you pay attention to like the newer D&D stuff, like outside campaign and things like that, or breaks between session, like long breaks between sessions. They have like what it costs to build or buy things, what it costs to maintain those, what you're doing to earn gold in your off time when you're not running around because some dude told you to go fetch the Holy Grail,
When I started this campaign, we were going out of Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and literally chapter, I think it's either 2 or 3, was build a house. And it was like, make your house a tavern. This is how much money you can make by the bartender. And I'm like, wow. And that was an entire chapter of getting your players to build this tavern-like thing.
Generate passive income.
Yep.
And I'm like, this is fucking dumb.
You should have made Mav like an influencer, and he's like, buy my book series, and I'll teach you how to make passive income. There's also the Growth of Animals spell. It's a spell which will cause 1 to 6 normal-sized animals.
1 to 6. I love that.
1 to 6 normal-sized animals to grow to giant size with proportionate attack capabilities. Duration is 12 turns, and the range is 12 feet. Yeah.
Hey, look, there's 1 to 6 bunnies over here. Grow!
And then they'd become giant size, and then it would just, super wild. But it is great, though, that I think like the cleric did like keep a lot of their spells, and it like hasn't really fundamentally changed over it. But yet, so much hate for the clerics. So much hate.
I mean, now they've added so many different classes to the clerics that yeah.
Well, and all the clerics that we meet in Tim's world are all cultists, so.
That is true.
Yeah. Yep.
More to come on Enoch. But like, so then you would have like magical research, so both magic users and clerics can attempt to expand on spells. This is a matter of time and investment. The level of magic required to operate the spell, which is determined by the referee, dictates the initial investment. For first level spells, it's basically 2,000 gold pieces. Second level, 4,000. Third, 8,000. All the way up.
That's expensive.
Yeah, all the way up to 6th level spells, 64,000 gold to learn. And so that's why you had to have these passive incomes and like have a
For
keep
real.
and be a wizard if you're wanting to learn 6th level spells. And they're like, I wonder why no one lived past level 3 in this.
And they kind of have kept that. You have, if you look at your spells, you have different components, and all those components cost things. And like for a cleric to raise dead, or what is it? Oh God damn it!
Well,
Kinda
Revivify is
Revivify
only
is 300.
300.
300
it has
diamond.
it has to be a diamond worth 300 gold.
Yeah.
I think it's raised dead is like 1,000,
Yeah.
and then resurrection you get high in there. But you have to like buy the component, and then it shatters when you use it or whatever.
Yep.
But-
How dare them?
But no DM wants to keep track of that.
Just
Yeah.
deduct gold.
Yeah, so here we move into the monsters. So like
Real
when
monsters.
when men are appearing like in a fight, anywhere from 30 to 300.
Jeez.
Wow.
When goblins or kobolds are in the fight, 40 to 400. Orcs, 30 to 300. Hobgoblins and gnolls, 20 to 200.
This is why people didn't live past level 3.
Ogres were 3 to 18. Trolls, 2 to 12. Giants, 1 to 8. Could you imagine 8 giants
giants
rolling up on a party? Like,
Of-
roll
of-
a d8 for me. I'm just going to grab a... Well, that's... Dang it, Ryan. Oh, well, that's a d10, but we'll just say, yeah, I rolled 8. That would be insane. 2 to 16 wraiths, 1 to 12 mummies, 1 to 8 specters, 1 to 6 vampires, 1 to 6 basilisk, 1 to 4 medusae, 1 to 4 gorgons, 1 to 4 manicores, 5 to 12 headed hydras, 1 to 4 chimeras, 1 to 6 wyverns, 1 to 4 dragons,
4 dragons.
2 to 20 gargoyles, 2 to 20 lycanthropes, and then 1 to 4 purple worms. And then you get off into like other crazy ones as well. I don't have to go through every single one of these, but invisible stalkers, which is basically unseen servant. It just doesn't even have a number. It's just like, well, you just don't know how many are out there. So just imagine in your world, you like cast your little lamp that you have, and you just see like all these servants just like carrying out things.
I can't, like, 1 to 4 dragons. Imagine fighting all 4 of my dragons at once.
That sounded
some people
oddly
tried,
sexual.
and then they all died.
Fight 1 to 4 of my dragons at once.
Well, so I mean, here's the other side of that too, though. So this was, they were having, it's not just 4 people in a campaign. Like, they have 15, 20, 30 people playing in a campaign. So depending upon what you're actually doing.
And if you have like a castle of like 100+ people, then it's like, the dragons are coming to the castle, and it's like, wait a second, this is not an adventuring game. This is a me protecting my castle game. Like, this is Helm's Deep. What am I doing? Yep. So, like, obviously, which, Helm's Deep is a lot of what it's based on.
That was one of the big, I think it was the chainmail games. They actually did like a Helm's Deep. I think I read somewhere that they would recreate things like Helm's Deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you'd have all the Uruk-hai fighting all the men and elves that were in Helm's Deep.
Yeah, but just remember, the halflings and the dwarves can only be fighters.
Exactly.
They're stuck, and they can only be 4th level. Can't pass it, which is just, it's wild to me.
That is so wild.
I mean, I guess I could see it a little bit. Like, if you look at, if he really did pull stuff from Tolkien, the halflings in even the movies in the book, they weren't anything super special.
I mean, because then they became the thieves, the rogues, because they were small and they were quiet.
Yep.
And that's kind of where, they're like, hey, we're tired of just being fighters. All right, cool. You want to be sneaky? Perfect. Here you go.
Yeah. I mean, a halfling level 4 fighter, rough life.
Yeah.
Yeah, but nowadays, back then, yes, absolutely, it would be awful. But like now, you've got halfling luck.
Uh-huh.
There are a lot of people that play some crazy min-maxed halflings because of that. Because it's I can never roll in that one. Perfect. So I just got to be I got to be dexterous, and I got to be acrobatic, and I got this.
And then you have something of the small. I forget what it does.
Fury of the Small?
Yeah.
See, is Fury of the Small? I guess, yeah, it's goblins and halflings, so yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good old goblins.
And then this was interesting, talking about, dragons. So it breaks down, the different dragons. White dragons can only be found in cold regions. Black dragons only found in swamps and marshes. If the dragon can talk, there's a 5% chance it can use magic, but only first level. And this is for black dragons. Green dragons frequent woods and forest. If the dragon can talk, there's a 10% chance it can use magic. It can use first and second level spells. Blue dragons are at home in the deserts and dry areas. They've got a 15% chance. 1 and 2, first and second level spells. Red dragons inhabit mountains, hills, things of that. They can do 1 through 3 level spells, and then you've got golden dragons, which are able to live anywhere, and they're a class onto themselves. These monsters are by far the most intelligent, and they can employ spells up to 6th level, gaining 1 level for each of their stages of maturity. So there are different levels of as they grow. But yeah, it's just wild that a sleeping dragon may be attacked with a free melee round by the attacker, and they basically get a +2 for that. So just imagine your your attack damage, and you're like, cool, I get a +2 to this.
Yeah.
Not advantage, and then it's like, cool, everyone rolled 12s. Good for us.
Womp womp.
But yeah, it was just kind of wild to be like, okay. And then there's talking scenarios. And it's a, in quotations, very old 11 hit dice red dragon is encountered asleep in its cavernous lair. 3 fighters creep up and strike to subdue. All 3 hits scoring respective 2, 3, and 6 points, or 11 points total. 11 ratioed over 66, the number of hit points the dragon can absorb before being killed or in this case subdued, is 1/6 or 17%. The referee checks to determine if the dragon is subdued and rolls over a 17 on the percentile dice. The dragon is not subdued. So there were just like some very weird caveats where you could just go in and just like, all right, we're going to sneak attack this dragon. Okay, cool. We hit it for, 1/6 of its health points. Let me just put it to chance. Oh, I rolled a 17. Cool. You subdued this dragon. So like, I'm kind of thinking maybe we need to do that in Bearborn. Find this dragon and see if we can employ some or original edition.
Yep.
Roll to subdue the dragon.
Yeah, and then it's like selling them off. So once you subdued them, like the different prices that you can get for them, like 500 to 1,000 gold pieces for a subdued. Oh, sorry, that is for a low end. But you can get up to 66,000 gold pieces for like another dragon. So you could just subdue some dragons, and you start learning.
I'm gonna
some
subdue a dragon,
spells.
and then I'm like, all right, cool. I got 500 gold for subduing a dragon.
But yeah, I know that's what I'm saying. Like, how upset would you be if you're like, all right, I subdued this dragon. Oh well, it was old, so you only get 500 gold pieces. It's like, cool. I'm halfway to a first level spell.
Right.
I like the idea of having like a slave dragon. Like, what are you gonna do with a subdued dragon?
I just picture people coming in with like brooms and logs, and they just hit it a couple times. It's like, okay, I give up.
Yeah.
Calm
Stop
down.
it.
And then there's like dragon treasure. If it's a very young or young dragon, they're unlikely to have acquired treasure. Subadult dragons have half the indicated treasure, and then very old dragons can have as much or twice the indicated amount. So it's like you can pick and choose like how much your dragon has, which I love. There's the purple worms. Crazy that it actually goes into, which I didn't realize, how many different like blob creatures there are. Let me see if I can get this real quick.
I assume like the gelatinous cube.
Yeah, so there's the ochre jelly,
Yep.
black or gray pudding,
Ooh.
green slime,
Yep.
gray ooze,
Yep.
yellow mold. But then you keep going down, you're like, oh, cool, I got all of them. And then you have gelatinous cubes. And so it's like, oh my God, there are just so many like jello creatures and like
If you ever play Out of the Abyss in 5th edition,
yeah.
you run across the Pudding King in the Underdark, and he mind controls all of those.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Can we pivot the podcast? And I want to meet the Pudding King.
Okay.
Because until tonight, I thought I was the Pudding King.
I've got Out of the Abyss. I have the digital copy. I'll give you all the information on the Pudding King.
All right. I can work on that. I'll homebrew something. He'll actually just be eating pudding.
That'd be hilarious.
So my wife comes home and she's like, I got something for you. And I'm like, ooh, this is exciting.
Was it a snack pack?
It was. It was the chocolate and vanilla swirl. And then I immediately grabbed it and looked at it. And she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm making sure it's not dark chocolate. I don't like dark chocolate, but I like milk chocolate. And like,
Agreed.
she does things that are like, it's good in her heart. And then I'm just like,
And then she just lets you down.
I'm just like, this isn't what I wanted, or sugar-free or something like this. This happened one time. And she's like, no, I double-checked to make sure it wasn't sugar-free. So, see, I am the Pudding King. And then, like, rolling for different magic items. You've got your standard, your swords, your armors, but it doesn't really go into, like, crazy details. Your plus ones. You've got some swords that are, like, +3 versus trolls, which is like a cleric ability.
Mm-hmm.
Swords that can like locate objects, which is kind of cool. And then obviously with some of the swords, you've got advantages against trolls, undead. Once again, kind of like a cleric thing. Swords that like if you roll high enough on the percentile that have wishes included, and you get 2 to 8 wishes.
Wow.
Yeah, just imagine like swinging the sword and be like, man, I wish this guy was dead. And all of a sudden he's dead. You don't know why. Charm person, life draining ability. So I kind of think of that like as a cool thing, as like as you're like hacking into this person, you're like doing necrotic damage and like taking back like hit points, which there are weapons out there that do that.
I've got weapons of like vampiric touch and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They've got daggers that are +1 versus man-sized opponents.
Man-sized.
Man-sized opponents +2 versus goblins and kobolds.
All right.
And then they've got magic bows, a mace +2, warhammer +1 to +6, which they actually have one that returns like Molnimir, or I think Soulforger does as well, right?
Yep.
So it's just like, okay, these are things that have been around forever, and they're still used to today. The growth spells, giant strength, invisibility, gaseous form, polymorph, speed, levitation.
What, they got speed?
Yeah, they got speed. I mean, it's like haste. I see what you're saying. Yeah,
The drug speed.
I got it. Hey, I'm sorry. When I'm in D&D mode, I don't think about today and what's going on
Dude,
with
we
these
got
kids.
cocaine in our campaign.
Oh, well, I wasn't there for that.
You
Dragon,
listen to it, though.
And I'm an elephant of
it's
God.
Dragon's Bane.
Dragon's Bane, yeah.
You've got dragon control, which would be a great potion. Maybe we could find some of those.
Potion of dragon control.
Yeah, like, oh, we figured it out. We solved your dragon puzzle. We're
Dang
gonna bring
it.
in these original editions things.
So do and dragon control.
And then like different curses. So like a curse that basically just means any monster just shows up. That'd be cool. Disease, fatal in 3 turns unless healed. So
Whoa.
imagine you
Oh.
get like poisoned and you've got 3 turns or you're dead.
I'm immune
Yeah.
to disease.
Polymorph to an insect of the referee's choice. Transportation of 1,000 miles in a random direction, and then transportation to another planet.
Oh, shit.
How to ruin a campaign.
Right? Oh, it's like getting voided to hell or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but transportation to another planet, I just think like, and maybe that's where like the planes thing came in. They're like, let's just remove the T from planet. Now we got our plane.
It has to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. The rings of invisibility, mammal control,
Just
human
mammal.
human control.
Just mammals.
But humans are mammals.
Yeah, but you can control mammals, or then you could just control humans. So like one is obviously better than the other, which is actually easier to get mammal control. So maybe back in the 70s they didn't think that humans and mammals were the same thing. I don't know. A ring of weakness, which I'm hoping it makes people weak and not you weak. Protection, 3 wishes. I want one of those. Delusion, water walking, fire resistance. Din or Djinn or Din or Jinn. I think it's
Jinn.
Jinn.
Jin, yeah.
Summoning, so you can get a genie ring. That'd be pretty sweet. Spell storing, so
I think
Tim
Jin,
has that.
the what?
The Ring of Spell Storing.
I do. I think there are Jins in 5e.
yeah. I
They're
mean,
gins.
pretty much everything that's in
Gins
original.
and genies.
I mean, really everything in original edition has kind of carried on, and it's just wild to think that like
They have purple worms.
yeah.
Yeah.
There is the snake staff, which I'm assuming turns into
A snake.
a snake, and it's a stick that turns into a snake, so I love it. Just imagine, though, like, you have a snake, you turn into a stick, and then someone casts the turn sticks into snake spell, and then you're like, oh my god, what do I do? Does it turn back?
I
Or
would
does
assume.
it ruin the magical item?
I'm
Now, this is a podcast in itself. We should, like, pit magical weapons against each other and see what would win in a fight.
Technically, a magical weapon can't be destroyed, so it would have no effect.
It's not being destroyed, it's just turning into a snake.
Well, it's turning into snakes.
Just saying.
What if I kill the snakes? Do they turn back into?
So it'd be an immortal snake.
Hell yeah. Indiana Jones' worst nightmare.
Oh my gosh!
Because if we're saying that your staff of snakes can turn into just a wooden rod, and you cast
Turn stick to snow.
snakes,
I said sticks and stones. Sticks and snakes may break my bones, but clerics will die if you don't heal them in 3 turns.
then the snake, I guess, would be immortal because it can't destroy But then why wouldn't you just have your staff that turns into a snake anyway?
I don't know. There's just a lot of questions that I have. This is kind of like goes back to like if we have Judy pull a card and see what happens. See if we can transfer that. Then there's like different helms, the boots of traveling and leaping, which similar ones today. Flying carpet, pretty great.
Yeah.
The girdle of giant strength, so not gauntlets, but girdle.
It's a girdle.
It's a girdle.
But it's gauntlets of ogre power, so it's like kind of like nowadays it's like an amalgamation of those two.
Well, we have gauntlets of ogre power.
Yeah.
Is it? I mean, that's what it is. So that I thought there was one of giants. Like there was a.
It's a belt of giant strength.
Okay, so I guess the girdle. So
Yep.
Okay, sorry, it's the same thing, just called different. Sue me.
I feel like the girdle would have the cod piece as well. It's not just a belt.
True.
Mm-hmm.
And then like your swords have different alignments, which is great. So you had lawful, neutral, chaotic. I didn't talk on this earlier, but I know you guys had mentioned it previously that basically there were only 3 different alignments in original edition, and everyone was just assumed to be good. So you didn't have the 9 things where you could be evil or you could be neutral. Like they're just like, nope, you're good no matter what you do.
I kind of made that, if you listen to Session 0, I kind of made that a rule because it's hard to go, hey, we're going to fight, these dragons, but I'm an evil character. Well, then why would your character then go with this group of people and defeat this dragon?
He's got a bone to pick with him.
It doesn't really make sense why you would have...
He used to be part of the Zendars, and they kicked him out, so now he's plotted revenge.
But that would change his alignment. Why did he get kicked out of the Zendars who are evil?
He just fucked up too much.
So then he's more chaotic, like neutral.
He would try and steal shit from people and then get caught. And they got tired of breaking him out of jail.
Okay. All right. Sure.
Oh, and I know everyone was wanting to know, the Ring of Mammal Control allows the wearer to control 3 to 18 small mammals or from 1 to 8 large mammals. This does not consider any creature listed on the monster reference table. Control is complete, even to having the controlled monsters attack the others with it, which are not controlled. Range is 6 feet. So,
Interesting.
Well, that's the one spell like conjure woodland.
Conjure woodland creatures.
Yeah. And it's up to the DM to decide what those creatures are. Yeah. Fuck that spell.
Just be something that's natural to the area.
Well, like I said, I love the rust bag of tricks. Like the different bags of tricks are always great because I gave I talked about this last time, but I gave one to Ryan, and they drowned a goat and then they levitated a bear, and I'm just like, why? Why did
I plan things
Why
when
did
you
I
guys
do
are
this?
just ridiculous?
I really wanted to, instead of the bag of holding that I gave Snee, I thought about giving him the, what do they call it? The hole.
Oh,
is it just portable hole?
Yeah,
I think it's portable hole, yeah.
Because there's so much weird shit you can do with that thing.
Like use it as a house.
Yeah. It's like 10 feet deep.
Yeah.
It's 10 by 10.
It's a 10 by 10 basically pit that you can throw shit into, and then you can fold it up into a little cloth, and then no one would know unless you opened it back up all the way, and then it activates. But you can trap things in it, and then just...
Well, yeah, I think they use it in Critical Role
Yeah,
in the most recent campaign. But I think like they've done to where like it lives with the physics of the world that it's traveling in. So like if you pick it up and like fold it up as it's moving, all of the stuff in it is like rummaging around, and like you like have all this crap messed up. I think they've got like statues, like a giant bust made of marble or something crazy like that.
That's broken.
And then like people, and then like crates of stuff, and like every time they open it, it's just like a mess. And I'm just like, I love that. I'm trying to think. I know one campaign that another friend of mine did. Like they had like basically like the portal gun, and it was the porthole thrower, and it would basically make little portholes everywhere, which was kind of great.
I know there's the bag of infinite holding. That's a little different. Yeah.
And there's like satchels of holding.
They also have the bag of devouring. So you put stuff into it, and you have a chance that, because instead of just being a pocket dimension, it's actually like an orifice for some cosmic creature that eats stuff you put in there. So you have like a percentage chance that certain things get eaten through over time. So you could be like, oh, I got this sweet sword, but I need to learn how to use swords. Well, put it in this bag. And then you go you train for like 6 months. You can use it, and you go to pull it out. No, it's been eaten.
So I know we're kind of going off the topic of original edition, but I just want to talk like the first part when I was talking about the 4 races and classes. That was basically the first book. The second one where we're talking about the magic items and the monsters, that is like the second book. And this kind of moves into like the third book, which it's called The Underworld and Wilderness Adventures, which is kind of like the precursor to the player's handbook in regards to like how to play the game. So you get this very rudimentary like different like first room, second room, third room, dungeons and like how you can get to it. And then it gives you examples, like a little diagram, but it gives you examples of an underworld level. 1. Note the stairs down lead through blind passages and return to a circular room with wedge-shaped divisions. Unless secret door is located, this area will lead nowhere. And then number 2 is this is a simple room labyrinth, generally leading nowhere, but basically room A would be a room containing a monster and treasure, and let's just say it's 4 ogres and 2,000 gold pieces and 1 magic potion. And so it just like kind of goes through these different like, these are ideas that I have for you that you can do, and it's like if A happens, B happens, then C will be your outcome. And so I feel like a lot of what they did is they I know it was supposed to be a comparative simple rule set, but since it was the first of its kind, I think like some things were like overthought. So I think that is why like the advanced rule set focused more on like, we're just going to tell you how to like give you the tools and let you figure out and interpret it. So
interesting.
Very much so.
There's maintaining freshness. So I know you guys are good at that. But basically, as monsters inhabiting the rooms, spaces, and corridors of a level are killed or captured, the level will become drab and dull. Coupled with this problem, players will have to make fairly accurate maps of the level, so it will be challenging this way also. Remembering that egress to lower levels is desirable, one must nevertheless revamp worn levels by 1 or more of the several methods suggested below. So basically, like, as you're going, you need to make alteration. Like, it's just like as you're looking at the map, you need to like write on. Like, I just couldn't imagine like playing physically and then you like erasing what the DM did. And you're like, nope, this is what this is now. But it's just like maintaining the same dungeon over and over and over again. So yeah,
Jeez,
we're gonna play the same thing, but it's gonna be different this time.
Yep.
So I think that's where the advanced, when you move into the next edition, it becomes more of like, all right, we're going to give you the tools. Now you paint the picture.
Instead of painting it for you, and this is what you do. Interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And what's really cool is if you go to archive.org, you can actually download all 3 of the books for free. And so that's a pretty cool thing. Maybe it might be linked on our, social media if you want to look at it.
Hell
and,
yeah.
Maybe get together and play a original edition with your friends.
Fuck yeah.
And die at level 2.
Hey, man. Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, whatever happens, happens.
So, Nick, I see you over there with your magical book. This is going to be probably a long one because both Nick and I have like page and a half long notes. So, Tim, how many pages of notes do you have?
0.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did my homework.
Well, so it's funny you read the foreword that was on that, which was in December of 1973.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jack Scrubby, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, who was one of like the forefathers of the American miniature wargaming group. So actually, I think making like the actual figures for things like chainmail or the other stuff they were doing, was looking to cast out on his own to do some fantasy figures for games like chainmail. And so in May of 1973, Gygax actually wrote a letter to Scrubby, kind of foreshadowing the idea of D&D, wanting to bring it to life with creatures that were familiar from, obviously, Tolkien's fantasy world and other things that they had kind of come up with along the way. And so he sends that off to try and get funding or some Kickstart or whatever from Scrubby, which they brought him in for a bit and were looking to do it. And the unfortunate thing was they were so far behind in some of these designs, and the cost of doing some of this stuff was a little bit higher than what they thought they would really get out of it. So they really didn't do anything with Scrubby in the way of miniatures. I mean, I'm sure they probably just pulled some stuff and just turned it into whatever they wanted it to be. But at the beginning, it was just a concept idea, and they were trying to reach out to him for it. So then Gygax really started getting on the bandwagon of trying to get concept art done. So to start off, did a whole lot of stuff of just people he knew or whatever trying to pull to get some art done. What was his name? Dave, what's his last name?
Arneson?
Yeah, Arneson. He had some sketch art stuff that they tried to use, so some of his stuff's actually in the original copies that went out. They also, a lady named Cookie Corey, who was the wife of Bill Corey, and Bill Corey was one of the avid wargamers that actually played with Gygax. And I guess Gygax didn't have a driver's license, so he'd also bum a lot of rides from him.
Nice.
But so he got her to do some concept art. She only got a couple of things that actually made it into the actual final production when published. But they were trying long and hard, trying to get all this stuff done. Couldn't get any money going. Weren't really getting any revenue from anywhere else. So then they came across Don Kay, who decided to dump in $1,000 to try and help kickstart all this. And that's actually where like the strategy company, TSR was really started right there. Because finding out that no one else really had the funds to get them started, they started their own company, started off with $1,000 to get this all kickstarted.
Yeah, I read somewhere doing my research that their original art budget was like $200.
Yep.
Which is like wild. That I'm like, okay, $200, and then you're like, oh, you got to do that math, break it down. I mean, that's a few $1,000s, today, but like still crazy.
Well, and like so they weren't using anyone who was super professional anyway. So their actual first official hire was actually before that. So they also had Gygax's was it her half sister, Keenan Powell. She also helped do some design art for him, and most of these were just people kind of drawing and doing whatever. And honestly, a lot of these people that were helping out were still super young. Like people who were like Keenan Powell literally had graduated high school a few weeks prior to Gygax reaching out and trying to get some art made up. Then they officially hired on Greg Bell, who honestly was another person who was a little bit younger and some of these people that would travel like 55 miles to come play these war games. So Gygax would mail him like, hey, I want some concept art for this or for this or for this, like sending 2 or 3 things at a time. Then he'd draw some art up and then send it back. And then we talked about it, how they ripped off a lot of fan art from Marvel comic books. So that was Greg Bell who was drawing all these, and he's like, we're talking about stuff that no one's really drawn, or you don't have pictures to go off of. They're not real. They're like, I don't know what to do. So he would take like covers of the Marvel comic books and then turn it into a fantasy style, which is almost the same poses and same stuff, but instead of weird laser guns or other types of magics, they would go through and they would change it to like, this dude's holding a sword now. This dude looks, instead of looks like Thor on a horse, it looks like just a Viking on a horse.
Yeah, so if you pull up like the actual like source material on page 27, it's Beautiful Witch and an Amazon. The Beautiful Witch looks kind of like the genie from I Dream of Jeannie, and the Amazon is just literally a topless woman with crazy hair. So that's from like the actual like source books there. So yeah, it is interesting that it is like a combination of like something that I could probably draw, and then things like moving into like Thor with a sword. So,
but I mean, it literally like hand for hand. Instead of Doctor Strange doing whatever he's doing, it's just a wizard with a weird fucking goblet,
magic user,
magic user. then you literally have Thor, and it just turns into a Viking on a horse instead of lightning being around. It's just there he is.
Yeah.
And then they've got like the laser guns, and then those turn into swords instead of weird crazy things that don't exist.
Cyclops now holding a sword.
Right.
Well, I imagine there was some artwork from Lord of the Rings that were done, and they just copied that. Like, you look at typical fantasy stuff, and elves generally look the same, or goblins.
This elf does not look like any elf I've ever seen. It looks like a hobo.
For real.
Like goblins, always small and green, or orcs.
Yep.
So
we talked about the 3 books.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them, the Men in Magic, that one is from a cover of Marvel that was supposed to be, originally was Thor, and then changed. And then the Underworld and Wilderness Adventures, which is that was a picture of, why can't I think of it? A hippogriff, which looks ridiculous, but that was actually one of Keenan Powell's original drawings, and it's like she went for some of these creatures. It's a mix of a horse and a bird. Went to like the zoo or places like that to look up these animals and figure out how am I gonna fucking push these together. But yeah, so then going through Greg Bell, they got a whole lot of stuff, and then still needing, they actually, like, when their stuff was due to like start getting printed, they still didn't have what they wanted for the cover photo, so they had to keep pushing stuff back. And they took them so long, like, even though they got a whole bunch of stuff done, but they were looking to get a lot of this stuff out way sooner, way faster. There's even a picture, so it's just a werewolf face that's somewhere in the original books, which was drawn from like a young child. Tom Keogh, something like that, which was actually one of Gygax's friends growing up, who also into like horror and fantasy stuff, but he passed away at a young age, so he dedicated the books to Tom, and then had one of his artworks in there as like a werewolf.
It's interesting how gung-ho they were building this game and thinking, we need this artwork.
Yeah.
Like, we have to have this artwork. We have to have, when we put a goblin on the map, we have to have artwork for what this goblin looks like, or whatever the beast is.
And it gives you, it gives you a better way to visualize what it looks like. And it keeps popping up, too. As long as Gygax was heavily involved in D&D, he was always trying to get artwork. artwork.
But like, it's funny because none of the styles match up. Like, one page, you've got something that like looks like drawn by like a 10-year-old, and then you've got something that looks like it was drawn by someone who's like an art student, and then you've got like me like riding on the back of a motorcycle trying to draw a Picasso. Like,
Well, so that was part of the thing. Is originally they were like, oh, we're gonna have this one person do it. Well, they couldn't keep up, so then they had to bring in someone else to help do it, and then they couldn't keep up, so then they had to bring someone else. So you have like 5-6 different solid people that were working on artworks for this, along with just random shit of someone could be like, oh, hey, dude, I drew this picture while I was playing games the other day. Oh, okay, cool. So talking about like their budget for stuff. So for any small snippet of image that they had that they were putting in the books, they paid people like, I think it was like $2. And then anything that was like larger or like fuller scenes was like $5. So all these people got paid out for all these pictures. And then the other thing was, after they published, for every 1,000 copies they made after the first 1,000, they had to pay them again.
yeah.
So they were still getting like royalties from it every time they printed new stuff. And that was the hardest part for them, was getting all this money together.
Which, to be clear, you should be getting paid royalties for your artwork in
Yes.
perpetuity.
Yes.
Unless you explicitly sign something that says, hey, you can have my artwork. This is yours. You know, sorry,
Yeah.
just throwing that out there for the people that are striking right now. Like, you deserve to be paid for.
100%.
So, hashtag writer strike. Tim, make sure we SEO, we synergize, and synergy to get all of the return on revenue.
And Synerja.
yeah.
But so they had dozens of people that had put artwork into this.
Dozens.
Dozens of hundreds of couples.
Well, so you talk about the first 1,000. So obviously that was what they had first budgeted for. Where was the first publishing done? In Gary Gygax's basement. All the rumors are true. D&D's first publishing run was done from his basement. So all those talks of it being born from Gary Gygax's basement is actually true.
100%.
So that's the first trivia answer, everyone.
But so there was also another investor that came in too, because even with that first $1,000, they paid all the people that gave him stuff and trying to get stuff together to print all this stuff out. They actually had another investor that came in who was a third partner for the TSR, and that was Brian Bloom, who he was, I think it said that he was a welder or something like that. So he had a decent job, made good money, especially for that age, but he would just, again, one of those people that would drive 30, 40, 50 miles to come play war games, and he would crash on Gygax's couch. And then when he heard that they were still struggling to get money together for this, he's like, here you go. He's like, here's more.
So crazy.
And like they thought that like a little over $1,000 would have been good for their first publishing. They exceeded that by like 2.5 times, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is pretty impressive. Like, they did not expect... I mean, they expected it to be big, but I don't think they expected it to turn into the powerhouse it is now. Which is wild. With the next trivia question is, who were the first playtesters? Gary Gygax tested it on his kids.
His kids?
Yeah, so basically... which out of context kind of sounds weird. He tested it on his kids. But yeah, basically when they would get home from school, they would play some D&D, and their first campaign was them like fighting some scorpions and some kobolds.
Well, and like I know they did some other play tests with. They talked about it somewhere here in the beginning of this book, where they had like some newer monsters that they brought into like the chainmail or. What was another one of the ones they had? It was, Arrow, no. Oh, it was Cavaliers and Roundheads.
Okay.
Was another one of the games that was very similar to chainmail, but they would bring in some of these newer creatures or whatever, not just only for picture's sake, but for combat styles, I believe, too, to play test with some of these people that were just coming and playing with them usually anyway. So it was, part of the same group. But it's funny too, like you talked a little bit on, like creating the dungeon and all that kind of stuff. Because as they went through, and it was like, it's weird, in the little bit that I read, they talked kind of about like, so your referee or your dungeon master would sit here and they'd create these dungeons in layers, and they would, on your typical just paper, pencil.
Yeah, your
put it
legal
up,
pad or whatever.
Your legal pad.
Graph
your
paper?
graph paper.
Yeah.
So one square, like what we do, 5x5.
Yeah.
Theirs was 10x10.
Okay.
And I think the difference is, so like how, like we'll go through, if we're doing a dungeon crawl kind of dungeon session, you have your map, you're going through, you're doing everything. They didn't actually show the map necessarily, but like Phil was talking before, like you would have to, like the players would have to kind of draw their own rough map.
Yeah.
Based on this. Now, granted, the DM or the referee had their copy with everything on it, and they're just kind of like theater of the mind.
Yeah.
Here's what you walk into, but then people would have to be like, okay, so we're starting here. We're in this 30 by 30 room, and this was over here, and
which is funny when you think of theater of the mind, because it goes back to last week's session when I thought you said that there was a fence, a gate in the middle of a field.
Yeah.
And my mind's eye, I was like, okay, this is like, some like ranch, and it's like a gate, and it's not fortified. And Nick's immediately like, no, you idiot. It's an entire city. That,
it's a city wall.
It's like 30 feet tall, something like that. And I'm just like, I'm not getting it. And it's just funny because like, as I'm like, Valerie and Ryan are over here, like they're with me, they're along for the ride, and Nick and Tim are like, oh man, these guys are idiots. So it is funny, the whole theater of the mind is just like, you draw some weird things.
So you'd run across that too, like trying, because like you said, you would reuse stuff too. So you come back and you're like, well, this is the map I have, and I'm like, well, that's not exactly right. Like you're a little off here, or you miss stuff. Like we miss shit all the time. But if you don't think to go look in a room or discover a secret wall, then you just don't even know about some other shit that's on the map.
Mm-hmm.
And like the amount that you could move, like the fly spell, you could only move 12 feet per round, which now it's like 60.
Yeah.
Which is just like wild, but like, smaller cubes. Speaking of the theater of the mind, I'm just curious, when you think of Snee in your head, what do you think of? Like, what do you paint your picture?
I look at it more of like so a lot of the parts are actually kind of like wooden texture, not necessarily wood, or it could be wood, but it's magically enhanced, obviously, with more like outlines of metal in different parts to kind of like break it down and make it look more like featured wise.
Sure.
For sure. Which we haven't really gotten too deep into what like the actual armor that Snee wears.
Yeah.
Because with Warforged, they actually they implement the armor into their body style, so their body would actually change based on the armor they have. So I figure he's probably got a little bit of like some elbow paddy things since he's wearing leather armor. Everything else is probably pretty sleek.
I think you're blue now too, or something.
Something happened. I don't know.
So Tim, when you think of Snee in your head, what do you think they look like?
A robot.
Yeah, so for me, I see Bender from Futurama.
I figured you would.
And like,
so did Valerie. If you look at the
artwork,
the artwork that she posted,
I don't think I saw that. No,
it's somewhere in our group chat.
Okay, I'll have to.
You
go
can
back
also
to the
look.
archives.
So I used the picture that like the headshot she made, and I made it mine.
Yeah,
like my actual
avatar.
But it's very Bender-like.
It's just so funny that it's just like, you have this very delicate, this intricate thing, and it is very emotional to you. And I'm just like, hey, it's Bender from Futurama. Tim over here, who's the DM, he's the wordsmith. He's the theater of the mind. He's like, it's a robot.
It's a robot. I mean, I was thinking more of Doom Patrol,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't think of the guy's name.
I haven't watched it, but I know what you're talking about from like
Yeah.
pop culture memes, the memes.
Yeah.
The Mimes.
The memes.
The memes.
Brendan Fraser's character. I can't think of the Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name either, but I know what you're talking about. Which is what I see like a lot of people think about, but I was like, well, if you really think about it, like back in the day, they're not going to have just pure metal that they're just going to build a body out of. It's like a combination of like wood and metal, and the metal parts I see is more of like a almost like an accent to the rest of it.
Sure.
It's not just pure metal.
Yeah, it's like a clockwork kind of
Kind of, yeah.
mechanism that you're getting a vibe from, but also like you're arcane powered, so like we don't have to explain everything.
Exactly.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to derail. I was just curious, and when we said theater of the mind,
I'm sure
I was just
everybody has different
I
ideas
was
of
just
what
like
they think about
Bender.
it too.
just Bender, but with like black camo.
Yeah, the Warforged is hard to like draw into like a epic fantasy world with swords and boards, right?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like you could think like, okay, I guess it would look like almost like the 50s style robot because that's
Yeah.
archaic in
Yeah.
our mind, but
Yeah, I was gonna say talking about like so Bender, I think of that, but when I think of like I don't know why it's specifically your character, because when I think of Warforged, like in D&D, I think if you've ever played Destiny, like the Exos, where basically like they kind of have like that arcane spark in a
Yep.
way, and so I'm like, yeah, that's what everyone else looks like. But then you're this
Just fucking Bender.
You're this 2D Futurama, you know.
I look at it kind of like the Exos, but like also like the old school wooden mannequins, like had a fucking baby.
Yeah.
So it's-
Danny Elfman, if you're listening to this, please do our character art.
Hell yeah! I thought about actually like tapping back into my artistic abilities and drawing Snee, and then I just said fuck it, especially because Valerie made one, and I was like, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
I really like her art style too.
I'm just gonna throw a couple filters on Bender and I'll send it to you.
Just put a face on Bender's body. Boom, we're done.
Just like a cloak.
So how do you picture Jack Human?
Oh, we've talked about this before. I more or less, I made it.
Bender with skin.
Oh,
That'd be weird.
Skinder?
I don't like that. I don't like that
That
at
actually
all.
kind of sounds like a dating site for like white supremacists. So
Right?
Never mind.
I kind of Jack Humanman. I honestly like the way I described him the first time around was very characteristic of kind of Ryan's character. A little bit more of a slender body, medium length, blonde hair, blue eyes. Kind of like a. I mean, I'd say almost like elegant, like a half elf,
Yeah.
but without the ears.
Sure.
But I mean, but someone who doesn't stand out super hardcore.
Sure. I mean that makes sense. You're trying to be
I'm trying to be
nondescript human male.
Exactly.
My favorite part is that it was in Caleb's inventory that this, what is it, the Hat of Disguise?
Yep.
Yeah.
Fucking waited around for me to get disguise self spell at level 2 or whatever it was, or 3 that I got it. And then Caleb left. So then Tim was like, okay, well, the Baron left you a note, left some stuff behind. Oh, hey, there's a Hat of Disguise here.
That's like we had a Warforged that was like playing in one of our campaigns that was just playing it so wrong, and he kept getting knocked down every single episode or every single session. And so like one time I'm like, all right, I'll play him and see what it is, and I'm like, oh, these lightning fists that he's been throwing have been ranged attacks this entire time. He could have been 60 feet away throwing these punches, but instead he was just getting up close and just like getting wiped out by spiders. And it was just like, oh, it's just so funny. Like, because, part of your character is like you as a human, your flaws, your lack of reading and things of that nature.
Yep.
And so I know that slightly derailed from our artwork thing, but I was just I don't know. I just was like, I need to get it out into the universe that you look like Bender. You do not look like what you described.
Of course not. Of course not.
It's canon.
But going back to the maps too, so anyone who's ever done a D&D map, has stuff on there. They still have stuff in the new, if you get an already made campaign, but they had these keys for like the maps way back in the day, like dashes for like underground passageways. They had false doors, which I don't actually know what these false doors are. I don't know if it's a door that doesn't do anything, or if it's supposed to be like a one-sided door, but they had false doors.
Or is there like a pit on the other end?
I figured it more like a trap door, but
Right,
then
that's
again,
what
you go
I
back
would
to your
think,
interpretation, so.
Right. Which was just the wall line with a box on one side. Pit traps was an X. A regular door is your wall, and then you put a box that goes, like the line goes through the middle of the box, is your doors. They had secret doors, which you would just put an S through the wall. Super original.
Which is my people symbol for hope.
Stairs, which, stairs go up or down. So their stairs for up were like full-fledged lines for like steps on a stairs. The down was just like little scribbles inside the middle.
I almost spit out my drink when you said stairs go up and down, because I just picture someone be like, nope, these go up, they don't go down, like an escalator. I was like, oh no. It made me think of Mitch Hedberg when he's like, when the escalator break down, sorry for the convenience. Sorry.
Solid rock. So I guess if you just had solid rock, they would just color in the tiles or bricks or whatever. Then there is secret doors with 2 possible ways to open.
Ooh.
So I don't know if this means it opens from both sides or...
Doors that both open and close.
Or if it was like your regular secret doors only open on one end and the other side is just you can't get through.
Oh man, I have this stupid door puzzle that you made me think of, where basically like this door we could move, and depending on which way we moved it, it opened to different rooms, and it was the worst thing ever. I hate that DMs make doors the worst enemies.
They really are the worst enemies. So,
have you guys gotten stuck on a door?
We've gotten stuck trying to lockpick doors.
Yeah,
and then we just break the door.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure. Well, there was one where like I'd have just swung at that cave wall for hours.
Yeah,
or
yeah. Yep.
Because we didn't have the proper spells to actually open it.
Yep.
By the time that we realized it was there. But yeah, so the secret doors with 2 possible ways to open is the same symbol for a secret door, but it had like antennas or a V on top of the S.
For a very secret door.
Very secret door.
And then trap doors are just a box with a T, and then you have either a U or a D in it, determining if it goes up or down.
Ah, so there are doors that just go open and close.
So if you have a trap door that only goes up,
so it'd be like, so if you're on, say you're on the 3rd level, right? And there's a trap door that goes down below you. When you go down to the level below you, then it would be a trap door that goes up. So it's the directional in which it goes, not like it only opens up or down. It's just, is it taking you downward or is it taking you upward?
So it's just a trap door.
It is a trap door, but signifying which direction you're going if you go through the door.
This is like Schrodinger's cat kind of thing. Like, does the door exist on the other end if you don't open it?
Because it's such a weird thing to point out. It's a trap door that opens up and down. Okay, what does that mean? Because all trap doors open up or down.
Well, I think it's like saying like if you walk over it, you're not going to fall through it if it only goes up. But when you're down there, you can then punch up into it. And
it's not about
Mario brick it.
The up and down is not determining which way the door opens. It's what direction it takes you in the tunnel. So technically, your trap door, you would have a trap door that would take you upward, would be on the ceiling, and you could go up in the dungeon, or you could have it on the floor above. It would be taking you down.
So you're like trying to tell me I'm either going to go like Die Hard or Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
I can go up into a tunnel or I can go down into a tunnel.
But then if you go up in the trap door, then it becomes a down trap door.
Correct.
When you turn around.
You would be ideally like if they built.
So again, it's just a trap door.
Yeah, but it's saying where it takes you to. Like it's like
Okay,
If you think of it like a platformer, I see where you're coming from. But yes, I was.
Well,
in
it's
the
like
same
stairs.
thing.
It's stairs up or down. Like, are these stairs going downward or are they going upward?
I'm still standing in front of a gate in the middle of an open field. That's where my head's at.
I can't get around.
Yeah. Oh my God, what do I do?
But yeah,
D&D stuff.
exactly.
How do I confuse my players with trapdoors?
So one
You
of
should have a trap door that when you go through, you just come back on the same floor. Like it's a portal that you just go through and then you end up.
interesting.
You'd confuse us so much.
I mean, I think Tim's confused on this whole trapdoors go one way. Maybe it's like one of those like turnstiles where you can only go one way through the turnstile. That's what it is. Does
A
that make sense to
turnstile
you?
trap door.
You're just like, all right, you're walking through the middle of a forest, and then you see a turnstile, and you forgot your subway card.
Because I'm thinking, all right, if a trapdoor's on the ceiling, it can only go. Obviously, that's up, but then that's still a trapdoor because you go up and you can go down now.
Yes.
Yeah, but
It's
you have
not
to
like-
go back down. Like, yeah.
But when you
It's
have it
just a
when you
weird-
have it
It's just a
2D.
weird designation to put on the map. You put up, down. Well, of course, it does both.
I mean, there's also control human and control
I guess, yeah.
mammal.
Yeah.
So going
Well,
back.
also if I just put a trap door, like if I have my hallway and I just put trap door, I guess you just assume it's going downward.
Yeah, because it's on the floor. It's not on the
Well,
ceiling.
you can't tell if it's on the floor or the ceiling. You're
Well,
drawing on a 2D surface.
I would hope that my referee would tell me that it's either on the ceiling or
That's so the referee knows which way it's supposed to be.
I now want every single session to be like a diorama in a shoebox, so I can see both up and down, left and right.
Yes.
So I think we're on to something with some puppets.
Yep.
But talking about like what inspired, so like when Gary Gygax, this is the next trivia question for those listening.
No.
Like what inspired him is like, so he was making these like Civil War, Revolutionary War things, and like he was like, all right, I want to do something that's more fantasy based. He says that he drew a lot of his inspiration from Robert E. Howard's Conan the Barbarian books.
Ooh.
So like that was something that I didn't even think of, because we immediately think like Tolkien and things high fantasy, Arthurian legend, and it's just like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So
I think the Art and Arcana book definitely says Lord of the Rings.
yeah.
So it's probably, yes.
I mean, it's imperfect history. It's whoever asked him at whatever time, and he's like, I'm really into Conan the Barbarian right now, so that's the answer.
Yeah, probably.
But so after publishing, D&D actually took off quite well. And there's another group that was big into like the miniatures and game boards and stuff like that. That was called Avalon Hill.
I am unfamiliar.
I don't know if they exist anymore. They probably got bought out by something else. Probably got bought out by Hasbro.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
But so in 1975, they decided to do a tournament style for D&D. So they had 120 people that came in, and they were split up into groups of 15.
Nerds.
Exactly. But they were split up into groups of 15, and to the best of my knowledge, this was like one of the first actual dungeons that Gygax created to give out to the public, not just for his own sessions or whatever. But he designed what is called the Tomb of Horrors.
Ah, yes.
Yes. But so him, his son Eugene, and it was Dave Arneson,
Yeah.
and then Brian Bloom were kind of like the overseers of the TSR that went to this. And so each one of them overlooked like two groups to just make sure that things aren't getting too crazy. Because it was also like it was a tournament. So I guess the overall goal was to get yourself through this dungeon, get scored on how you do, who's still alive, what you succeeded at. It doesn't talk a whole lot about the actual rules of the actual competition, but just the over consensus of it. But so even though they were given like, hey, here, you're the referee for this group, here's this map, but it still gave like you being a referee a little bit to flavor things how you wanted, or, you know, change a little bit, but it was just the general, like, here's your map. And you could still run it the way you wanted to as long as it was still within the parameters of whatever the competition was.
Yeah.
But so, and again, going back to, like, they want to have all this artwork. He had asked Dave if he wanted to do some artwork, but I don't think he had enough time. But they had also hired on another new artist, someone who was probably a little bit more...
Was this before or after the tournament?
This was before the tournament.
Okay.
So it was one of their newest artists prior to the tournament, and I would assume someone who's a little bit more skilled and artistic than some of the other stuff, but to start doing more artwork. This was Tracy Leash, and she drew a whole lot of pictures to depict, like, different stuff that was going on in this dungeon crawl. So, like, either reenacting scenes that were happening or, like, displays of stuff. And, like, these are the pictures that she has that I'll hand to you. But it was like, okay, cool. Like, there's this demonic head on the wall that's very ornate and does all this stuff.
It looks like it's opening up to eat a sandwich.
Right? A really big
A
sandwich.
really big sandwich. Hell yeah.
Or, like, in an area of worship where there's a skeleton and it's pointing a direction, and just really detailed drawings to then also present to the groups to help get them more enthralled. You know, like maybe depicting someone who got stuck into a trap.
Yeah.
So
It looks like, like a pew of a church,
Yep.
and then it looks like someone, like, fell into a trap.
Yep. So it was just really interesting and cool stuff that, once again, he's like, I want people to have these pictures. I want something for people to visualize. Because, I mean, at this point, like, aside from just some whatever art, but how many games really had a whole lot of art that goes with their stuff?
Yeah.
At that time, at least.
Right.
You know, like, Tolkien and, you know, aside from, I guess, you know, comic books, but, like, a lot of these books and other stories that you read don't have pictures.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit here or there,
Like
but nothing crazy.
The cover art would be about it.
Yeah. So something that can draw you in, not only at the beginning, but continually draw you in the way of visualizing what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think that was one thing that they did right with this is, like, hey, let's make sure we have pictures. Who cares if it looks like it was drawn by your 5-year-old son
Yeah.
or, you know, a professional?
Well, it's funny that we talk about the different art styles because, so, like, Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson met each other in 1969. Then Arneson, yeah, I know, went on to create Blackmore, which is like the predecessor to D&D, that he sent like 18 to 24 pages to Gary Gygax. And then they're like, hey, let's put together this game. So they put out in 1974 the first 3 books. In 1976, they put out the other 3 supplement books. They hire Dave Arneson, who wasn't actually like an official like employee, as the creative director. And then shortly after, they didn't see eye to eye, so they actually ousted him from the company. And then when they launched second edition, or, you know, advanced D&D, literally paid him no royalties. They cut him out of everything.
Woof.
Yeah.
Which, you know, like we talked about earlier, like the finances of trying to get this done is they brought in someone and created TSR.
Yeah.
And Dave wasn't in that at all. He wasn't one of them.
I
Well,
mean,
he was the creative director, and he didn't have time to do artwork, so then they had to find someone else to do this art. So, like, it makes sense that you're not part of it, but I just thought that was just so funny that, like, these guys really had this great relationship at first. They created this powerhouse of a game, and then they just fell apart. And then, like, it kind of gives me, like, the, like, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak kind of vibes.
it happened to Gary Gygax. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah,
in
I mean,
third
like-
edition, they cut him completely out
Exactly.
of it.
So it's like, it's one of those things. It's like, you know, treat people how you want to be treated. And sure enough, they cut him out, and then 2 editions
Which,
later.
I mean, you know, technically, they got bought out. TSR got bought out before 3rd edition came out,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just pretty much revamped the whole thing. And we're like, all right, see ya, Gary.
Which is funny because there's a picture of Gary Gygax wearing a 3E shirt in 1999 because it launched in 2000. Like, that's what the shirt said. This shirt said 3E, and then it said 2000. I was like, wait, why was this picture taken in 1999, but it says 2000? I'm like, oh, because that's when it was released. So he basically had, like, a pre-release shirt of something that he was going to get cut out of.
Woof. I know.
I think he was actually cut out before that, like before they actually released. But I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like basically he had like some merch of it before, like the pre-release merch in 1999, and then they cut him out like right before they released it. So it's kind of wild.
And he developed his own game that didn't sell well.
Yeah, that
What
happens.
was it called?
I'm scrambling to find it
Is that the name of the game? I'm scrambling to find it.
because I was looking up Avalon Hill, which is obviously owned by Hasbro and now Wizards of the Coast.
Told you. Knew it was Hasbro that
But
bought him out.
It always is.
Pure guess.
I mean, if you take anything D&D related and like cut it down to its like finest parts, I'm sure Hasbro has something to do with it.
I mean, so Avalon Hill, going back on them a little bit, was more like a war game thing. Like they did Gulf Strike, which was like a war game based off the Iran-Iraq war.
Oh, I was really hoping it was like based on
Just
like,
golf.
the PGA Tour.
Yep. Something interesting about them is the Avalon Con World Board Gaming Championships was held in 1991, and the World Board Gaming Championships, which is the continual name, is still active. Its next scheduled event is July 20th to the 28th of 2024.
Hey,
Let's
if you're
go.
looking for commentators, you can clearly hear that we are world class. So
Yeah,
hit us up.
for sure.
Gary Gygax. Now I'm scrambling.
Well, that's fine. While you're doing that, I was going to talk about some things in the media that had to do with the Satanic Panic.
Ooh, Satan, hail Satan. I mean, what?
So like obviously, you know, a lot of great things came from D&D, but like
Satan.
yeah, Satan came from D&D. But what's wild is there was a lot of like panic and a lot of like devil worship, like you said, Satan. And so in 1979 in Michigan State, a student's room was found with a suicide note, and they found a bunch of D&D paraphernalia in his room, and they're like, oh, well, it's due to that. Well, 30 days later, the kid just shows back up. And so they're like, oh, hey, you're back. And then in 1980, he kills himself. And so it's just like a very weird story. I didn't dive into it too deep because I've got two other ones.
So he wrote a note and then just disappeared.
Yeah, for 30 days and then came back.
Then came back.
Yeah.
And then killed himself a year later?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. He was playing the slow game.
Yeah. But yeah, basically detectives said it was linked to D&D. So they found the D&D stuff in his room and was like, oh, yep, that's the case.
Dude, it's the same shit with like COVID. You died of a heart attack, but because you tested positive for COVID, you died of COVID.
And then 1982, a Virginia high school, this kid shot himself to death. And his parents sued the school because the principal introduced it and made it a school sanctioned activity.
Shooting yourself?
No, D&D.
Because, when I play D&D, I think about guns.
Yeah. Well, what happened is basically what his parents recount from it is that some person cast a spell on him in the D&D club, which then caused him to commit suicide.
I cast gun on you.
What? I cast bullet.
I cast bullet.
I cast normal missiles. And then this last one, which was very interesting to me, in 1984 in Oakville, Missouri.
Ooh.
There were basically two out-of-work like masons, drywallers, something along those basically the
Masons
out-of-work.
are the brick workers.
Yeah, so I think something along those lines. Basically, these two guys broke into this woman's house and strangled her to death, stole a gun and stole her car, and drove to Atlanta, Georgia.
For Gen Con?
No, they did not do it for Gen Con. Basically to get away. And when they had their trial, the main guy who committed the murder, he wanted to bring in expert witnesses on D&D to explain the game. And when the judge denied it, he said that it basically should be a mistrial because he couldn't explain his case via Dungeons and Dragons.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
I think it's fantastic, though. Like, I mean, obviously, I feel very bad for her, that she was murdered, but it's just like wild that he's like, I want a mistrial because you're not going to bring someone in to basically explain what D&D is.
So, Your
in a
Honor,
trial.
she rolled a nat 1 on her
Yeah.
saving throw.
Yeah. Which I just thought that was crazy because, like, one, obviously, it's in Missouri where we're from. So,
Not very far.
yeah, it was interesting when I was, like, looking up different deaths due to, quote, D&D.
Well, and then there was the whole city that, that the kids were playing D&D and then were attacked by a bunch of monsters from another dimension because the Russians and Americans were trying to, make psychic soldiers. And then, obviously that was all D&D's fault too.
That was D&D's fault.
So Gary Gygax's other game, which was published in '92, was called Dangerous Journeys.
Ooh.
It was originally called Dangerous Dimensions, but TSR threatened to sue him because of the D&D. What's fascinating about it is the design of the game system addressed the many perceived flaws and limitations of the older AD&D game system, such as a lack of skill system and rigid class-based restriction on weapons. Yeah.
What was his fucking game?
Yeah. It kind of sounds like almost a Pathfinder in a way.
Yep.
Which is fascinating. I tried to find copies of it, and good luck.
Well, maybe I'll have to check archive.org and see what I can find.
Yeah. Anything else, gentlemen?
Yeah, that covered all my information for the evening.
Yeah, I kind of was tired after my 15-minute intro with the break in between, so I think I'm pretty good, pretty tapped out.
Nice. Next week we should be jumping back into session 48 of our campaign.
Yeet.
Where we will fight dragons in Bearborn. If not, we'll do probably advanced D&D talk.
Did you say dragons with an S at the end of it?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, technically there are multiple dragons.
Yeah, but you said next session we were going to fight multiple dragons.
You may.
I'm going to roll to subdue the dragon.
So yeah, we'll continue to talk on the deep dive of D&D on the BS roll at night. If we don't jump into our campaign.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Cheer.
Cheer.
Love you, bye.
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 The BS roll is Timothy Farr as our forever DM, Valerie Simone as Ida Gotham, Nick Urban as Snee, Phil Jaycox as Enoch Sunforger, Ryan Freeman as Babylon Wonderhoof. You can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and wherever podcasts can be found. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave us a review. It helps us a lot. We do not advertise, so our ratings and reviews are the best way to help us grow. Thank you so much. Love you a lot. Have a good one.